What is up, my Lorcana Goons, and welcome back to the Lorcana Goons channel. My name is Kevin, and you're joined with Zach Stone and I for the Monday weekly Meta Watch video. We're going to go over some new meta trends that are happening in the Lorcana game space, and this is the weekend of the first ever Lorcana World Tournament. I am super excited. Zach and I are going to go over what we think are going to be the most represented color combinations in this World Tournament. If you guys don't know the World Tournament structure, the players are going to have to play the first four. It's 28 players, by the way. 28 players are going to compete for the World Championship. They're going to have to play 4 rounds of sealed. They're going to build decks off of sealed packs, getting 4 packs from every set from Shimmering Skies to Rain of Jafar. That's about, what, 16 packs total?
That will be 16 packs total. They are going to have about, how many cards is that? 16 times 12. I know I did the math not that long ago. It's about 184. Yeah, about 184 cards that they get to choose from. And this is, definitely a first time that I've seen Lorcana do something like this for one of their bigger tournaments. But this is going to bring a lot of anticipation because we're also getting the triple deck format where each player has to bring 3 different decks using all ink colors available. They can create their own combinations of them, however, but they have to use every single color. And this is exciting because then we get to hopefully find out when the next season of DLCs are. I can't wait. Kevin, how are you feeling about the World's Tournament this weekend?
I'm super hyped. It's been a long time coming. We've been waiting for the World Tournament for months. For months now. We had Nationals back in, January? It's been literally 5 to 6 months since most of us have gotten to even participate in an official Lorcana tournament, let alone watch one on the stream. So I know a lot of us, including myself, were extremely disappointed that the World Tournament was not open to the public. Kind of sad that I don't get to be there in person, right, to go see the first ever Lorcana World Championship. But we're going to be able to crown a first ever champion, and that champion is going to have to be a master of all 6 ink colors. You're going to have all 6 ink colors represented in the 3 decks you make, meaning you cannot overlap any ink colors. So if I want to play in this tournament that format, right, I have to build 3 different decks, and I can't build Amethyst, Emerald, and Amethyst Ruby. No, I have to pick, the all 6 colors, and I can't overlap. So, Zach, what do you think are going to be the most represented color combos?
Right off the bat, I've been kind of saying Amber Steel might need to be one of the, locked in selections because that opens up green, purple, and red, blue. And green, purple is also a very good color combination with this meta. I think wrong lever, pull the lever strategies with Diablo are something you cannot ignore. Has a lot of evasive threats. Amber Steel could take an aggro approach or play Steel Song, and you have Red Blue, the DKP fashion with Sharks and Pirates Life and locations, or you can play Scrooge McDuck in the item package and go a little bit more, wider and better into the mirror match per se. But overall, this is still going to test the limits of all the players. So yeah, I think that's probably a solid way to go about it. I did bring up Amethyst Emerald, and this is kind of the list that we have up here. So this could be a deck list, that they're allowed to bring. This deck list, however, is from the Glass City Showdown, the 5K over there in Toledo, Ohio, and this was by Bearsy, I think that's what it says. So yeah, it's pretty solid list overall. I like that they're just playing the pull the lever and wrong lever packages, but we don't see Shift Diablo. They aren't committed to that whole lineup, but we do see Cricky and Shift Ursula. I know these are cards that you like a lot, Kevin. How do you feel about this list?
Huge shout out to Beersy for making top 8 at this 5K tournament. This is one of the bigger tournaments that happened this weekend, and huge shout out to Glass City for throwing this tournament for the Lorcana community, right? But I like Cricky and Ursula overall in the current meta. I think being able to stop the opposing Amber Steel decks from singing songs with your Ursula Sea Witch Queen is pretty powerful. And Cricky's just been a power card since it came out, right? Like, it's just a card where you kind of skill check the opponent sometimes. They can't always keep playing around it, and when they slip up, you're able to just get some really big tempo swings thanks to that Cricky. But yeah, this is a deck from Beersy over here from a recent tournament. Zach and I are going to go over some recent tournament results from the color combinations that we think are more likely to be seen at the World Tournament. But, there's always some interesting outliers. I know, Zach, you said that ideally you want to play green purple so that you can play Amber Steel and Ruby Sapphire alongside those. But I know some players are a little bit more comfortable maybe using something like Ruby Amethyst, but that means your Ruby color is dedicated to that Ruby Amethyst combination. So there's a couple ways you can kind of play with that. But once again, huge shout out to Beersy playing Emerald Amethyst and locking it down in the top 8 with this deck that we've been seeing kind of pop off this format. But this one's playing some interesting cards like Lyle Tiberius. I haven't seen this card since I want to say like set 4, set 5 format, right? This Lyle Tiberius is a 3-cost, unequal character. Very good card that can kind of slow the game down in your favor. It's a 2 strength, 4 willpower body that says when you play this character, you can choose an opposing character to give Reckless during their next turn, which can, help you out against certain Diablo plays or something like that. Then, whenever one of your other characters is banished, no matter which turn, your opponent loses 1 lore, which is actually very powerful and very relevant. I feel like the format is pretty fast, so some of these Amethyst decks, they get to 10 lore within the first like 5-6 turns, and dropping a Lyle can really, put them back a couple lore. And if you're playing against a deck that plays Be Prepared, this Lyle will let you minus opposing lore based off of every other character you have on board if your opponent decides to use that Be Prep. So some pretty cool interactions there. Love to see it. And in first place of this 5K tournament, we have Alex Hansen taking Amber Steel all the way to first place. Once again, utilizing that Rhino Shift strategy. Shift Rhino, man, this card is everywhere in this format, and I think we're going to definitely see a lot of Worlds competitors utilize the Shift Rhino package in their Amber Steel decks. But Alex is using some cards I haven't seen used in Amber Steel in a cool minute, like 3 copies of Beast Tragic Hero. This character lets you draw 2 cards per turn as long as there's no damage on him, and I think it's pretty impactful, right? We have multiple copies of Cinderella Ballroom Sensation, 3 copies of the 1-drop Rhino, and only 1 copy of Daisy Doug Donald's Date, with 2 copies of our Robin Hood Goons and 3 of our Shift Robin Hood Champion of Sherwood, probably because you want to be able to still shift Sing Whole New World, right?
I think 100% of the time that might be a line you'd like, but it's also not too bad into some of the emerald, steel, amethyst, purple, all those color combinations that aren't, red and blue. Robin Hood does really well into. I also like that they are playing this beast. I did think about it that it was kind of strange at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I felt like this doesn't allow you to rely on Whole New World as like a way to draw a bunch of cards. Keep in mind that Rapunzel and Whole New World were the only ways that this deck can cycle. But you get to now have Beast as an additional card to draw from, and it is a nice standalone card. It does quest for 2, but it's not bad because you're not giving your opponent those extra cards when you do use Whole New World, and it might be able to take out some pesky locations if it ever does get damaged. But there's only 2 Lawrence in here, which I feel like is a very strong card in this meta. I currently play like 4 copies of Lawrence in the Amber Steel list that I had built. I like the one Sonic Warrior Aerial though; it's a nice little addition. But Rhinos seem to be like the card of this new Amber Steel breed of decks we're seeing. And here we have another list with Rhino in it. This is from the Krypton Comics 2K weekend, day 2, and by Schuyler Duntz. And this is the Amber Steel aggro deck that I more in favor than Amber Steel Song, but I have some interesting points I want to make about this list. They are playing 4 copies of Ursula Vanessa, so they do want to be able to sing your songs. They aren't playing Happy, and they aren't playing Seven Dwarfs Mine. They are more going for the removal from the song package rather than the location package. But we have 3 copies of Vinny, the Pigeon. I like this card a lot. I really like Vinny. Really good with the Lilo Escape Artist, being able to bring her back and just have another way of gaining a bunch of lore, because most of the time they do have to remove her off the board. But 4 copies of almost anything else. If I'm looking at this right, that is literally what it is. 4 copies of anything else that they play. So, Kevin, do you like Amber Steel aggro more position than Steel Song?
Personally, I like this deck more than the other version of Amber Steel. I'm not a fan of Whole New World right now. I just feel like there is a lot of Ruby Sapphire still running around, at least in my local meta, and I hate using Whole New World against those decks, right? And personally, I want to play Vinny. I want to play an Amber Steel deck that can run my Vinny the Green Pigeon. It's really cool. I love that interaction you mentioned. You mentioned it in the last video too, Zach. If you have a Lilo on board with a Vinny, your opponent has to constantly keep challenging that Lilo, and it's just going to give you more and more value every time. But this deck is super consistent. Huge shout out to Skylar Dunn. Sky, I think, is more known for playing Sapphire Steel, if I'm not mistaken. He's on Twitter if you want to check out his Lorcana journey. But yeah, very interesting to see them playing Amber Steel aggro, which I have been seeing kind of pick up in popularity since last week. You have a lot of cards in this deck that can quest for 2, plus a lot of cards that can protect your 2 lore questers like Penny that can give your characters resist, or Pete, which will stop your opponent from using Be Prepared whenever they want, right? So Amber Steel making big waves. I think this is probably up there with like the top 3 decks of like your choice for this Worlds tournament, right? For that 3 Masters of Ink challenge you have to do. But you have some other options. Let's say you want to dedicate your color combination of steel with something more like purple. If that's something you're more comfortable with, you play purple steel, and then you play sapphire. What you could play sapphire ruby, and then you could play emerald amber or something like that. But purple steel is another option. Here we have a deck list from the top 8 Deck Masters League. This was a tournament where Milky finished in top 8 with his Amethyst Steel deck, and I like this list a lot. The highest cost character we have is Elsa Fitzspirit. We have some removal with our 4 Strength of a Raging Fire, but everything else before that is going to be some lore burst or ways of questing, right? We have 4 Goat, 3 White Rose, 3 Giant Cobra. We have 2 questers like Simi and Genie, Calhoun, which can steal 2 lore, basically, which is really nice, and 4 copies of Doc to draw 2 cards. We even have our Madam Mim and a Fox package maxed out here. You probably want to be able to bounce back your Pete or bounce back your Doc whenever you decide. I feel like bouncing back Pete and bouncing back Doc are actually very powerful this format. What do you think, Zach?
Oh, 1000%. Yeah, and you also just don't forget to mention that like just playing like a Madam Mim snake against like Steel Song is a really good answer to like the ballroom Cindy. If you don't find your Calhoun, being able to just kind of like replay your crabs too can also come up, or even just winning the games, just bouncing back your goats and replaying them to finish that last little bit of lore is always a good way that Amethyst can win the game. And only 4 Strength of a Raging Fire, no Zeus. So it might be a little bit more of a battle against like Maui Shark in the red blue deck, but you do have a lot of aggression and a lot of ways to really close out that gap. So it definitely has a more solid matchup. And I do like this pick into the meta because you can play red blue and you can play like Chernadogs, and there's your 3 colors.
Yeah, I really like that too. I feel like those are some 3 solid decks you can play in that format. I'd like to think that some local tournaments are gonna have some of those formats for us too, right? But no Zeus scares the heck out of me, dude. I think I have Maui half shark trauma. I think I just have like shark trauma, dude. Because like when that Maui half shark hits the board, I've lost so many games, and I'm just like, no, why don't I play Zeus in this deck? Or where is my Zeus, right? No, bro. The zoos, bro. Okay, let's go ahead and move on, right? What are the colors we got this week? Next up, we have a top 4 list from the Summer Geek Festival Open. This was a pretty big tournament, and top 4, we have a CNC with a Blurple list. I like this list a lot. We kind of saw a list like this last week as well that was playing this Elsa Protector, the 4-cost character, 3 strength, 4 willpower, and inkable that says you can pay 1 ink, choose and discard a card, then exert a chosen opposing character. Not too bad. It's an ability you can actually use on the turn it's played if you have enough ink, which is pretty cool. So if you have like 5 ink, you can go ahead and play this with 4. Then, pitch a card, pay 1 ink, and exert an opposing character. I like the utility with this card. I think this card can actually be maybe even played as a 2 of. It's like basically another version of Elsa the Fit Spirit. Obviously, you don't have Rush and you're kind of pitching a card from your hand, but you can do it all. You can also do it multiple times within the game. If this Elsa stays on the board, you can just go. It's not even once per turn. It is not once per turn. You can do it multiple times per turn, right, Zach?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it has a limitation. I think you can just keep like exerting stuff over and over again. If you're able to like keep a hefty amount of cards in your hand, you can essentially go like Elsa exert, Monstro challenge, rush, rewriting Monstro, exert another character, challenge, rush. Yeah, you can do some cool things with Monstro and this Elsa. But it's more like a little tech option. Keep in mind that you are playing the big Elsa, the one that can be shifted. So you have another body that you can shift this on if you do not have any fifth spirits in rotation. But I do like that because you have some uninkables that you play that you might be able to pitch and not have to worry too much about. You're getting some free items back with Tamatoa. You don't need to always play the Bopsicles. You can just discard them again because you can get them back when you find more Tamatoas. This Elsa isn't bad. I definitely think this card is something you should consider. And even in triple deck format where all the deck lists are open, this is a card that if you played as a one of would have to be considered in your decision making.
Yeah, I like that. I also like that idea that it's open deck list for this world tournament because players are going to be able to immediately know like, oh, you're playing something like Hypnotic Strength, right? So if I see you have Hypnotic Strength in your deck list, then I'm way less likely to quest with my characters on turn 1 or on turn 2 if you have a one cost character because you have that combo of Hypnotic Strength plus Royal Guard, right? So if I open up like Daisy Duck and you play a Royal Guard on me and I know your deck list, oh, I'm not questing with that Daisy because you're going to hit me with that Hypnotic Strength Royal Guard combo. You know, you could even use this Hypnotic Strength Royal Guard combo to clear my Rhino Shift. You know, so that's going to be some really good skill check in there, I think, in this tournament with open deck list, right? Because if I go Rhino Shift, I have to consider the possibility that you might have the Hypnotic Strength Royal Guard combo, which can clear the Rhino Shift in one turn, you know. So that's what I really like about this World Tournament. We're going to see some of the best players take advantage of this information, and some of these dominating meta decks really get to be showcased to the highest of their potential. And speaking of high ranking decks and high ranking players, we have a third place list from this same tournament by LaChaz, a Ruby Sapphire list titled DKP, and as we all know, this stands for Din Confum, the DLC Australia champion who's going to be competing in Worlds and who is a personal friend of Zach Stone and I. So, DK, if you're watching this, good luck this weekend. Very excited to see you play. But this is the deck that he pretty much put on the map, the Ruby Sapphire, Maui Half Shark, Location Burn deck, as people call it, and with Super Goof. We're seeing 4 copies of Super Goof in the meta now. So, me as a Ruby Amethyst player, let's say we're playing at a tournament that doesn't have open deck lists, I now know for the most part that I gotta respect Super Goof if my opponent's playing the DKP list. I feel like DKP has been actively posting his lists on Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and there was a point in time where he took out Super Goof from the deck, but I feel like as of recently, there's a lot of steel in the meta. I've even been trying to use Super Goof in some of my Ruby Amethyst deck lists. It doesn't work, by the way, but I think it makes its way back into this Ruby Sapphire deck for sure. Alongside the 1 copy of Hades, I think this deck has some very strong removal tools like the 4 copies of Be Prepared, 3 Sisus, and 4 Maui Hero to All, which is just a universally good card in this deck because you're able to control the board with swings and just clear locations, which I feel like pop up every week or so.
Yeah, another reason why I think Super Goofy is really good too is because normally when you're like playing against DKP, you know that once the shark comes down, you're going to be unable to turn anything sideways until you get rid of it. So you're more than likely going to get as much lore value as you possibly can early on, and Super Goofy can punish that. So it's a very, very interesting card right now, but I think it's overall a nice inclusion. They are playing 4 copies of Happy as a Clam Tamatoa in this list. I know that Popsicle is being the only target, but it was once said by DKP himself that that is good enough to have to play it. So overall, I do like where this deck can go, and open deck lists. Knowing what your opponent plays doesn't mean you can always beat it, right? You know that they have the 1 Hades and the 1 Let It Go, but they could have it when you are considering that. And be careful, guys. You don't want to get got by those 1-ofs.
And speaking of one-ofs, check out this second place list from the Reign of Jafar box tournament by Mackenzie DeBoynes over here, titled 72 is a lot of cards, with several one-of cards in here that, you know, if you had an open deck list, if I saw a 72 card deck in front of me and my opponent played the 1 Queen of Hearts 2 cost with Rush, I'd be hot. I'd be tilted. I'd be like, wow, I really got hit by the 1/2 cost on turn 2. But we have that. We also have 1 copy of Sisu Daring Visitor and 1 copy of Madame Medusa, the boss in this 72 card deck. Wow, love to see it. Huge shout out to you, Mackenzie, for making second place at this 30 plus player tournament for the Reign of Jafar box tournament season. Pretty cool, man. We have 1 copy of Dragonfire as well, which I've been playing. A lot of people have been playing in the Ruby Amethyst list because it's a very clean way to out Maui Half Shark. But with some more, since it's a 72 card list, let's take a look at what other cards have been added in here. 2 copies of Maleficent, a Monstrous Dragon for that late game. You got 4 copies of Brawl because you got to out Diablos, 4 B Prep, 2 B King Undisputed, 2 Finders Keepers, because you're playing 72 cards, you might as well draw 3 of them, right? And 2 Maui's Fish Hook. Very interesting.
This list is a pile. I just don't have any other way of explaining it. There's even 2 Maleficent dragons in there, and Be King Undisputed made a return in the Ruby M color combination here. The other thing I'm trying to notice and identify, and I think is going to be true, is that there are no new cards in this list. Mackenzie, if you are happen to be watching this video, let us know down below why you decided to play 72 cards. If there was any specific reason to this pile of cards I'm looking at, because that is a lot of cards. I think you can definitely take out 12 of them.
Yeah, I personally like Ruby Amethyst as a deck right now in this meta. Maybe this isn't the way you play it at the World Tournament or the way we're going to see people play it at the World Tournament. I think 60 cards is usually the standard of what we see for this color combo. But I do think that all these cards, it's funny because all these cards are relevant in the format, right? Like Pirate's Life is very strong. Maui's Fishhook has been seeing appearances in Ruby M and Ruby Sapphire decks. The Queen of Hearts is very relevant for that early game. Sisu Daring Visitor gives you more options to have that Sisu shift line. I haven't really seen people play Maleficent Monsters Dragon. That's a card for sure that I feel like kind of fell off a little bit in the recent meta. But 72 cards means you can play 4 Rabbit and 2 Genies. So once again, huge shout out. Congrats on getting second place with this 72 card Ruby Amethyst pile. I really do want to see if any of the world's competitors decide to take Ruby Amethyst to this tournament, because when if you pick a color combo like Ruby Am, you're taking the 2 best colors, I think, in the 6 color card pool, and you're putting them together, and you're making not a tier 1 deck. And I say that with love because I'm a huge fan of this color combo. But I admittedly so it's not like an overpowered tier, like higher tier deck. I think a lot of us would consider Ruby Amethyst as like almost a tier 2 deck right now. I still think it's best deck. I still think I can win a tournament with this deck, with this color combo. But I know a lot of players, if you're going to be picking 3 decks and you have to run through all 6 inks, you might want to consider saving your Ruby slot for something like Ruby Sapphire, because Ruby Sapphire has shown us overall the data has much more consistent results, right? Or maybe you want to save your Amethyst package for Amethyst Steel or something like that. So, Zach, if you were to play Ruby Amethyst, what are the other 2 color combinations you think you'd have to pick to play that tournament?
It makes sense that you got Blue Steel and Amber Emerald as clean alternatives. I know Blue Steel can be more of like a Kiwi style aggro deck. You can play Dogs, and then you could just play like a red purple burn deck or like an evasive strategy. So you might force your opponent to have to deal with something along the lines of an aggro game style plan, and make sure that you ban out their strategy that's supposed to counter that. I think there's a lot of thought that you can go into when you building decks for a meta like this. But keep in mind that you must be able to be proficient with all your decks if you're looking to become the world champion. And while just mentioning Amber Emerald Dogs, we have here from the same tournament a top 8 list by Buddy Quadruple 9 over here, and their list looks very aggressive. We see the return of the 1 cost uninkable lady in this list. Not too many Dog players have been including this card in their deck list as of late. It's just a card that seems to get overclassed by some of the other 1-drops that you have available. But I do see that they are maxing out on the Little John Nala synergy here for the 4 willpower characters, so that Rapunzel. Wait, what? There is no Rapunzel in this list. Kevin, what do you have to say? Because this is something that we thought was a Dog staple.
Yeah, I mean, winning on a budget is what I like to say. Shout out, Buddy. Taking a Dog deck, which is normally more than $100, because you're usually playing 4 copies of Rapunzel gifted with healing, and this version of this deck probably costs less than $40, because really the most expensive card is going to be like Lady the Family Dog, and everything else seems pretty affordable. So no Rapunzel. I feel like if you're not drawing cards off the Rapunzel, you're probably using Lady the Mistpark Avenue to grab cards back from your discard pile. I would have thought that Tramp Dapper Rascal makes an appearance in here since you're not playing Rapunzel. Also, I do want to mention, Zach, I'm not entirely sure. This shows Lady Elegant Spaniel, but there is a world where it's the new Lady, the Inkable Lady. just because I'm seeing I'm seeing 3 copies of Merryweather, and although Merryweather is a very good card in this deck, I feel like I was using Merryweather because Merryweather plus the Inkable Lady, the new one, I forget what it's called, the Decisive Dog. That
Decisive dog.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lady the Decisive Dog. You can trigger the ability with Merryweather. So I do see the Elegant Spaniel here also, but there is a world where this is the other lady. I just want to mention that because of that Merryweather. But yeah, instead of Rapunzel, I guess you're playing 4 copies of Dale, the Mischievous Ranger. So has an ability that says when you play this character, you can mill the top 3 cards of your deck, put them in the trash, and this Dale has an effect that says when you play this character, you may put the top 3 cards of your deck into your discard pile, then chosen opposing character gets -3 strength until the start of your next turn. It's a pretty cool way to keep your characters alive. Let's say you're questing with your Donald Ducks, your Piglets, your Lilos, and then you play this Dale, you pick an opposing Smee, and now that Smee has 0 strength at the start of your opponent's next turn. And it's going to add more fuel for your Turnabog. This list is not playing any actions whatsoever, no just in time, none of that. So every card in your discard pile is going to be 1 cost less for these 3 copies of Turnabogs here, which I think is very powerful in this meta. But Zach, how do you feel about Lady Family Dog in this deck?
Well, Lady Family Dog might not necessarily be the card you want to see in your opening hand. Again, you do play a lot of one cost characters, so you're able to go a little bit wider. But the additional free body that you're playing, maybe like a Lilo or a Piglet, yeah, that's a lot of lore you're able to gain on the following turn. So it might make sense to want to play it, but they are playing the Shift Lady, so you have more bodies to shift onto it. And that could be eventually enough to win some games, getting some extra bodies, plus getting a 4 strength 4 willpower character to be able to deal with some aggressive boards. You might be playing the mirror match and need to get rid of the opposing daisies, but this is still, an interesting way to build this list. I do believe that it's going to be hard to shy away from, lists that have Rapunzel in it is more of a favorable option to play, but you can get the job done with something like this, and it's good to mention that.
Yeah, you can get the job done with a lot of different decks and a lot of different strategies. And let's say you've been wanting to play a deck and you don't have the Rapunzels in your arsenal and you don't want to spend like $30-$40 per card. You can strategize and, pick some different cards like Buddy over here did and play the Dale instead of the Rapunzel. So huge shout out to Buddy. Huge shout out to Campaign Plus for throwing these tournaments for the local community. Love to see the low budget decks win in these tournaments too, man. So, top 8, not too bad. Imagine you had some Rapunzels. Maybe that could have been a first place victory, though. You never know. But once again, thank you so much for watching the video, My Lorcana Goons. We're going to be watching the World Tournament as well throughout the weekend. Super excited to see what's going to win or who is going to be the first ever Disney Lorcana World Champion. Like we were saying, they're going to have to pick 3 different decks and use all the color combinations. So if you were playing the World Tournament, what 3 color combinations would you pick? Zach, I'm going to let you know right now, I'm a Ruby Amethyst enjoyer at heart. So I'm going to have to pick Ruby Amethyst for one. And I like what you said. I like those options you picked. I think I'd probably go Blue Steel mid range, and then I'd go Chernadog because I'm pretty active in the Chernadog abilities. I like doing that. But there also is a world where I decide, you know what, I'm gonna go Amber Steel, and then we'll play Emerald Sapphire, and we'll cook up some super secret Emerald Sapphire goo. But then it's pretty much guaranteed that they'll never ban that color combo, right? So it would probably be one of those options for me. What about you?
Overall, I'm going to have to go with my bread and butter, Amber Steel, but I think Emerald Amethyst and Red Blue are going to be my last 2 options. Just because I played and have practiced with enough Red Blue players where I feel like I could take it to something like that. And Emerald Amethyst would be the deck that I think would be overall my weakest point. I would have to pretty much dedicate a lot of my time playing that deck proficiently. I feel like a lot of decks won't just ban that one outright. I do believe it's either going to be Red, Blue, or Ember Steel that'll take the ban. So I should just be practicing the one I expect to have to play the most with. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting format, an interesting way to go about the meta. And I can't wait to talk more about this.
Now, normally this would be the part in the video where Zach and I start simulating mulligans with one of these decks as part of the Mulligan Mondays portion, but we actually teamed up with a former Lorcana judge who's going to break down the tournament structure and a little bit of what to expect for the draft portion of the Lorcana World Tournament, and we recorded a whole separate video for that. So we're going to end it here, but please be on the lookout this week so that you can see that video with our special guest, so you can get a little bit of a better understanding on what to expect for the first 4 rounds rounds of the sealed deck building portion, and now we all have a little bit better of an expectation of what we're going to see during the constructed format, right? But until then, remember to stay tuned to Lorcana Goons for more. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to support the channel, because it means a lot. We have our Discord in the link in the description below. If you guys do well in tournaments, be sure to drop your deck list in our Discord. We have a deck list section. We go live every Wednesday and Thursday as well, so we're going to be playing some games on Pixelborn while we hype ourselves up for the World Tournament this weekend. Ooh, Zach, there's so many good players. 28 players are going to duke it out for some of the best pricing that I've seen. Remember, guys, we have the market watch on Fridays, so Zach and I are going to get up extra early before the tournament stuff goes down so that we can record the market watch and give our opinions on the pricing for the World Tournament, because these people are going to be getting some cool stuff like the whole new world promos, the mats, some of these, the World Champion Mickey card. Oh my goodness, so many things to talk about this week, so be sure to stay tuned to Lorcana Goons, and we'll see you goons next time.